Okay, quadratic formula is an alternative way of solving quadratic equations instead of factoring. Remember quadratics at ax squared plus bx plus c. And when we were solving that, if we were going to solve it by factoring, we had to have it equal to 0 in order to do that x method. Y'all remember doing the x method for factoring? That was one way we solved these. This is a different way. It's a formula that you just plug it into, and it works whether the problem factors or not. Factoring is great as long as the numbers are right. If it doesn't factor, then we were kind of stuck. This is the get us out of jail card for if you won't factor, you can use this. Okay, so what we're going to do today is this stuff. One of the things that you got to keep in mind is if you're going to use quadratic formula, or anytime you're going to solve a quadratic that has the three terms like that, it's got to be equal to 0. So it must be equal to 0 first. That's the very first thing that you do is get it equal to 0. Okay? If you don't have it equal to 0, get it that way. Okay, so we can do something with it. All right. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to list A, B, and C. Y'all remember doing that with the vertex and the axis of symmetry stuff? We listed A, B, and C. You're going to do that same list with this. Okay, you're still going to do your list A, B, and C. Then you're going to apply the quadratic formula. And this is the quadratic formula. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c. Then you divide that by 2a. All right. That whole thing, these a, b's, and c's in this formula are from the equation. The a, b, and c from that equation. Okay. You need to memorize this formula. We will very likely have a quiz tomorrow with this formula as one of the questions. Okay. And writing that formula correctly with all the signs and letters in the right spot. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so the b
is the number that's in front of x. A is the number that's in front of x squared, and c is this constant right here, this number that doesn't have an x.
So you would write the same number
in those places. Yes, that's exactly right. All right. The way that I memorize things is not like everybody else. I'm not really great at memorizing things, but if you put it to the tune of music, it's pretty easy to memorize things. So I memorize this by putting it to the tune of row, row, row your boat. You know, like row, row, row your boat, gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. That tune. So we're going to sing this to that tune. Okay? So I'm going to sing it a couple of times, and then I want you to join with me. We're going to make a choir. I used to sing in a choir when I was a kid, so we're going to. No, I want them to hear it. I want them to hear it. They won't be able to pick your voice out of everybody else's, hopefully. All right, so here's how it works. All right, so x equals negative b plus or minus radical b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. You kind of hear the melody there? You can put it to other tunes, but this is the one I learned it with, so that's what I said. Plus or minus. Yeah, yes. So here it is again. X equals negative b plus or minus radical b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Like a bouncing ball. You remember watching cartoons? Yeah. Okay. All right, so let's do it again. X equals negative b plus or minus radical b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Everybody join in. X equals negative b plus or minus radical b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. One more time. X equals negative b plus or minus radical b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. All right. Memorize that. Every how you got to. If you got to put it to the tune of some of your favorite hip hop rap stuff, you can. I don't care. Just memorize. Okay? That's the way I remember it. Okay? Writing it over and over will help you memorize. If you write it every time that I write it in notes today, you'll probably have it memorized before the end of the lesson. Okay? All right. Now, inside of that quadratic formula, there's a very important thing. That b squared minus 4ac. That is what's called the discriminant. Discriminant. It discriminates what kind of answers we're going to have. Okay? A discriminant, that's the name of that, b squared minus 4ac. Depending on what kind of answer you get for b squared minus 4ac, what kind of answers you're going to have for your quadratic. If b squared minus 4ac is positive, it's greater than 0, it's a positive number, that will give us 2 real solutions. That'll give us 2 answers. If it's positive, we get 2 real answers. If b squared minus 4ac is equal to 0, if it's equal to 0, we're only going to have 1 real solution. Okay? So if it's greater than 0, it's a positive number, then we've got 2 answers that we're going to find. If it's equal to 0, there's only 1 answer because it's going to be the square root of 0 that's put in there. And if you add or subtract 0 from something, it doesn't change it. We'll see some examples of this in a minute. The last case for the discriminant is b squared minus 4ac is less than 0, which is what kind of number? Negative. If something is less than 0, it's negative. That would be no real solutions. Okay? If it's positive, we get 2 answers. If it's equal to 0, we get 1 answer. If it's less than 0, we get no answers. You have to put both of the solutions. You've got, yeah, we will find both of, if there's 2 solutions, we'll find both of them. Okay? Now, the less than 0 case, we don't get into this too much in Algebra 1, but it's really a big part of Algebra 2. It gives you 2 complex solutions. I'm just mentioning that because you will hear that again when you get into Algebra 2. You'll hear that some in geometry, but not much. But we use it a lot in Algebra 2. So 2 complex solutions when it's a negative under the square root. Okay. So let's look at some examples of this. And what we're going to do is we're going to find the discriminant. And solve. That's going to be our instructions. 3x squared plus 5x minus 8 is equal to 0. Okay. So the first thing that you want to do when you get one of these problems and they ask you to solve it is first check to see if it's equal to 0. Is it equal to 0?
Yep.
Good. We've got the right thing going on. Is it in descending order?
Yep.
Yeah, we got x squared, plain x, and then a number that doesn't have x at all. So that's in descending order. So once it's in that form, you're ready to list A, B, and C. Okay. So what's A? B, C. Negative 8. Good. That's the same thing we did back when we were doing the vertex and the axis of symmetry and all those things. Okay. Nothing has changed as far as that goes. All right. The only difference is instead of it being equal to y or f of x, we got it equal to 0 now. Okay. The next thing you want to do, instead of doing the full on quadratic formula all at once, we want to do the discriminant by itself because it's going to tell us if we even need to do the rest of it. Because if the discriminant is negative, then we know that there's no answer, so we don't have to do the rest of it. So we want to find that discriminant first. All right. And remember, the formula for discriminant is b squared minus 4ac. And I'm just writing that formula there so we just remember it. More times we see it, the more we will remember it. Okay. So b squared, that'd be 5 squared. 4 times a is 3, and c is -8. So we plugged in b, a, and c. And we're going to work this out. Okay. So what's 5 squared? 25. And then we're multiplying -4 times 3, and then that answer times -8. So we're multiplying -4, 3, and -8. So that's going to be -12. What's -12 times -8? Well, negative times negative is going to be positive. 12 times 8 is 96. Good. And then we're going to add those two together. What's 25 plus 96? 121. What kind of number is that? Positive, 0, or negative? So that tells us we have how many answers? 2 real solutions. No, that tells us we're going to find 2 answers. We're going to use that 121 in the quadratic formula. Okay. Now we're actually, this is the discriminant part. Now we're actually going to solve using the quadratic formula. Remember the quadratic formula? X equals -b plus or minus radical b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. That's what the quadratic formula is. But we already know that b squared minus 4ac is how much? 121. That's what we found. So instead of having to write all this out and rework it, we've already got that answer, that part of the problem. So we have x equals, what's -b? It'll be -5 in this case. Plus or minus the square root of 121 over 2 times a. 2 times 3 in this case. Once you get there, you want to simplify things. So on the top, we've got this square root of 121. We first check to see if 121 has a nice square or nice square root. What's the square root of 121? Anybody know?
11.
It's 11. So it works out nice. If it doesn't have that, you're going to break it down with the factor tree like we did right before spring break. Okay? So we know that -5 is going to be added and subtracted to 11. And then on the bottom, what's 2 times 3? 6. Okay? So we have 2 equations to work out here. We've got -5 plus 11, that answer divided by 6, and we have -5 minus 11, that answer divided by 6. We got 2, that's where our 2 solutions are going to come from. -5 plus 11 over 6, -5 minus 11 over 6. And we're going to simplify those, work them out. -5 plus 11 would be 6. 6 divided by 6 is 1. One of our answers is 1. What's -5 minus 11? -16. And on the bottom, we still got 6. Does 6 go into 16 evenly? No. So we reduce that fraction. What will go into 16? That'll also go into 6. 2. It'll be -8 over 3. Those are our 2 solutions, 2 real solutions to the equation that we were given at the beginning. That's what we're going to do on every problem today. Do what now? What do you mean? Oh, you got to get it. We'll do the next examples like that. We'll get to that in just a second. Okay. All right. So we're going to A, B, and C, discriminant, then use that to find the actual solutions, if there are any. Okay. Let's look at the next one. So Blake asked, well, what if it's not equal to 0 at the beginning, like this one was? What if it's not that? So let's look at one that's like that. Let's say we had 2x squared minus x equals 7. Is that equal to 0? No. If I move the 7, that would put a 0 on that side, right? By subtracting. That cancels out. There's where the 0 comes from. The left side, we want to write it in what order? Decreasing order from biggest exponent down. So we got 2x squared minus x minus 7. I don't know why I left all that space. I'll pick it up and move it. There we go. So this red equation is now equal to 0. It's in the right order. So now we can do the A, B, and C, and then keep the ball rolling from there. So what's A? 2. B? Good job. C? -7. Good job. All right. So we got A, B, and C. Now we can find the discriminant. I'm going to abbreviate that. D-I-S-C. Discriminant. Remember the formula for discriminant is what? Good job. B squared minus 4AC. So for this one, what's B? -1 squared minus 4 times A, which is, and C, -7. Be careful, don't drop a sign on one of your values because it will mess up your discriminant, which could mess up everything else. So be careful on your signs. When I square -1, what do I get? I get +1. And then I'm multiplying -4 times 2 times -7. So that's -8 times -7, +56. So it's plus 56. So our discriminant is what? 57, which tells us we'll have how many answers? 2 solutions, 2 real solutions. All right. Let's find those using the quadratic formula. X equals -b plus or minus radical b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. You okay? Don't die on us now. We got notes to take. Don't die. Okay. Yeah. All right. Now, so where does the 57 go?
In the radical?
Yeah, underneath the radical. So we're going to have x equals -b. So what goes there? +1. Good job. Square root of 57. Remember, discriminant was 57, so that's what's going to go there. What's on the bottom? 2 times a. What's a? 2. So we got x equals 1 plus or minus something over 4. Does 57 have a nice square root? No. 49 has a nice one. 64 has a good one. But 57 does not. So we need to try to simplify it using the factor tree that we did last week or 2 weeks ago. 57, I know it's divisible by 3 because 7 plus 5 is 12, and that's divisible by 3. So 3 goes into it 1 with 2, 19 times. But does that break down any further? No. So am I going to pull anything outside of the square root? No, because there's not a pair there to pull out. So we're going to just have the square root of 57 there. Our 2 answers, because that doesn't simplify, our 2 answers are going to be x equals 1 plus the square root of 57 divided by 4. That's one answer. The other answer is x equals 1 minus the square root of 57 all divided by 4.
We don't solve them?
You could get a decimal approximation for those if you needed to, by just working it out. Find the square root of 157 with the calculator, and then add 1 and then divide that by 4. But we're going to leave it as the exact solutions. How's that? Okay. Those are the answers right there. That's our 2 real solutions right there. That's not that bad. There's a good bit of stuff. Let's look at another one. Let's say we had 2x squared equals negative 2x squared plus 7x plus 2. If you move this side, could you move this? Yeah, that'd be 1 step, right? Instead of 3 to get this over there. So that's what I would do, just because it's shorter. You will get the same answers no matter which way you do it. So the way you saw it happening is absolutely fine, but it takes a little longer to do or more work. Okay. So how do we move the 2x squared that's on the left? We subtract it, right? Because it's positive. And there's our 0. What's negative 2x squared minus 2x squared? Negative 4x squared. So notice how I put that with the like term. So anytime you got to move something over, if there's somebody like that already on that side, you combine those with whatever operation you got there. Okay? We're subtracting, so we minus. Okay? Now, from there, we get A, B, and C. What's A? Negative 4, B, C. All right. What's the next thing we find? The discriminant. What's the formula for that again? Yeah, B squared minus 4AC. So B squared be 7 squared. 4 times A times C. Okay. We're just putting in the B, A, and C into the problem. What's 7 squared? Positive 49. Negative 4 times negative 4 times 2. Positive 32. Good job. We add those together. How much? 81. Good job. So our discriminant is 81. That means we have what kind of solutions and how many? 2 real solutions. That's what that means. Okay. Not right now. It matters when we go to put it in the quadratic formula. That when we simplify that part, that it'll be a perfect square. With that being a perfect square, I guess the only thing you can get from it right here is that this problem would have factored nicely. If you did the X method, it would have factored. That's the only thing that can really tell you is that could have happened. But since you've already done the work to get the discriminant, I wouldn't go back and do factoring. I would continue with quadratic formula because you're halfway done. So X equals negative B plus or minus the discriminant underneath the square root divided by 2 times A. Yes, most of them you will find have 2 real solutions. There are a few that have 1. There are even fewer that have none. It's kind of like in chapter 3. We did equations. There were very few of them that had no solution or all real numbers as the answer. There were a lot that had one answer or had an answer. So that's kind of the same way here. All right. So negative B would be what? Negative 7 plus or minus the square root of 81, which we know is 9, right? So we got X equals negative 7 plus or minus 9 over negative 8. Once you get to that spot, all you got to do is split it up and work them out. negative 7 plus 9 over negative 8. And then x equals negative 7 minus 9 over negative 8. Negative 7 plus 9. 2 over negative 8. Which reduces to be what? Negative 1/4. So there's one of our solutions, is negative 1/4. What's negative 7 minus 9? Negative 16 over negative 8. Two. We have a solution of negative 1/4 and positive 2. So far, so good, maybe. You're running out there. All right, let's try this one. Let's say we had 9x squared do that one. So it's already it's in the right order. Got it equal to 0. So we're ready to do the discriminant in A, B, and C, right? What's A? B? C? Okay. A little bigger numbers, this one. It's not a big deal. Discriminant. 30 minus 4, 30 squared minus 4 times 9 times 25. $30 squared is 900. Good job. 4 times 9, negative 36 times 25. Or maybe do it in a different order. What's 4 times 25? Times 9? That's a little easier, right? Oh, the discriminant is 0 on this one. So that means we have what? Nope. One real solution. That's what you meant. All right, so we got one real solution. So we go and we work this problem with the quadratic formula with a 0 in the place of the discriminant. X equals negative b plus or minus radical b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. It is flowing. Okay, so x equals negative b would be negative 30 plus or minus the square root of 0 over 2 times 9. What's the square root of 0? 0. So we have negative 30 plus or minus 0 over 18. If I add 0 to negative 30, what do I get? I get the negative 30 back. If I subtract 0 from negative 30, what do I get? I get negative 30 back. So that adding and subtracting 0 doesn't do anything to that number in front. So the only answer I have is negative 30 over 18, and I just need to reduce that. So if I reduce that, what goes into 30 that goes into 18? 6 goes into 30 how many times? Negative 5, and then into 18, negative 5 over 3. That's the only solution I have is negative 5 over 3. So here's a case where the discriminant was 0 and we got one solution. It's about the same amount of work as the two solutions is. Only difference is we can do the square root of 0 pretty easily. A lot easier than the factor tree method. Okay? Two more. We'll be done. Let's say we had x squared minus 7 equals 3. Okay, that's a good idea. Why are we putting those two together? They're like terms. They're the same. So that'd be x squared minus 10 equals 0. We need to get it. Not just a plain old x. So that means b is what? 0. If it's not there, it's going to be 0. So what's a? And c?
Oh, you said C, -10.
-10. Yeah, b is 0 because it's not there. There's not a plain x in the problem. So that's why b is going to be 0. Okay? After you get the list of a, b, and c, it's all the same. The discriminant, how you work it, all works the same. Let's find the discriminant. So maybe at this point you can kind of start. You remember the formula. You don't have to write it down every time. So it's 0 squared minus 4 times 1 times -10. It's b squared minus 4ac if you forgot. Not minus, but it'd be plus 40 because you got -1 times 1, or -4 times 1 is -4 times 10 be negative times negative is a positive 40. So our discriminant is 40. That means we have how many answers? 2. 2 real solutions. That's what that means. Catch that later. X equals -b plus or minus radical b squared minus 4ac. Plug in the stuff you know. You know -b. Is there such a thing as -0? No. So when you go to -b and b is 0, it's just 0. And we know that the discriminant, the b squared minus 4ac, is how much? 40 over 2 times a, which is 2 times 1. So we can just go ahead and turn that into 2 if we want to. 0 plus or minus. And we're going to simplify that square root of 40. Okay. So we'll do the factor tree for 40. Going to do 2 and 20. 20 is 4 and 5. So we got a pair of 2's. So what comes out? That pair, a 2 on the outside, what's on the inside? Which is that 2 and that 5 multiplied back together to get 10. This is where you simplify some, okay? The rules are that you can simplify the numbers that are on the outside of the radicals, okay? So you can look at this number that's in front and this number that's in front of the radical and the number on the bottom. If they are all divisible by the same number, then you can divide by that number. In this case, we got 0. What's 0 divisible by? No, you can't divide by 0. Everything.
Okay.
0 divided by anything still works out to be 0, right? So 0 is divisible by 2. Is 2 divisible by 2? So we can simplify by dividing all 3 of those by 2 and working that out. So that's going to give us 0 plus or minus 1 square root of 10 over 1. And now we just got to simplify that a little bit further. If I add and subtract 0 to the square root of 10, I get square root of 10 right back. Right? Square root of 10 over 1 is the same thing as just plain old square root of 10, right? So our answers are positive square root of 10 and negative square root of 10. We just split them apart into two different ones. So somewhere around 3.1 and then negative 3.1 is about what those are as decimals. Somewhere around that. Okay. So there's a case where we got to simplify a little bit. So remember, the rules are you can simplify the numbers on the outside of the radical after you've done the factor tree for the radical. Okay, that's what the rules are for that. That's going to come up on your handout today. All right, so let's look at this one. Say we had x squared minus 6x plus 8 equals negative 4. Okay, so I'm going to add 4. And that gets me x squared minus 6x plus 12 equals 0. So there we have the right order. It's equal to the right thing. What's A? B. C. Let's get the discriminant. So negative 6 squared minus 4 times 1 times 12. Work it out. What's negative 6 squared? 36. 4 times 1 is 4 times 12 is negative 48. What's 36 minus 48? Negative 12. What's that tell us about our problem? No real solutions. That's it. Then you don't have to do anything else after that. Because then you wouldn't learn it. Exactly right. You wouldn't learn much. There are some like that, but not many. They don't happen. That doesn't happen very often. Okay. I have to look back again. I'm not sure if they're on this one or not, because I needed you to learn quadratic formula today. So practicing it is the thing. Okay.